Morning, everybody. Thank you for joining us. We'll just give it a couple of minutes, just wait for other people to join us. All right, good morning, everybody. Thank you for joining us in our latest series of webinars. This morning, I'm joined by Paul North of CityFibre Wholesale and James Cushing, who's the City Manager for Northampton of CityFibre. So 2 years ago, ACS upgraded to full fibre infrastructure due to increased need for better bandwidth due to Office 365, 8x8 voice over IP, etc. And we chose CityFibre as our partners, but also as our suppliers. So CityFibre are our leading fibre provider in the UK, currently working in and out of 60 cities at the moment, but obviously growing that. And obviously with the advent of 5G and flexible working, we're going to be covering both the business side of things and the residential element of CityFibre. So Paul, James, thank you for joining us. I'm going to hand over to you guys.
Great, thanks David. Yeah, good morning everybody. So my name is Paul North. I am the Head of Regional Sales for the Wholesale Division of CityFibre. So as Dave just mentioned, we are the UK's third largest digital infrastructure provider today. What that means is that we're actually going into towns and cities across the UK, digging up the ground and laying our own duct and fibre infrastructure. Today, the title of this webinar is Shaping Britain's Full Fibre Future. We're going to talk a little bit, I'm going to talk a little bit about why the UK needs full fibre, what full fibre is, how we're leading the charge on full fibre, and I'm going to hand over to my colleague James, who's going to specifically talk about some of the things that we're doing in Northampton at the moment. So before I begin, I just want to take you through a very brief history of the internet over the last 20 years. So in 1992, we were using 100 gig per day across the internet. Currently got a 120 gig hard drive in my smartphone that I'm holding right here, so pretty much see how small that data was then. In 1997, we were using 100 gig per hour across the whole of the internet. In 2002, we were using 100 gig per second. In 2007, we were using 2000 gig per second. And then the most recent stats from 2017, we were using the staggering 46,600 gig per second. And it's estimated that by 2022, we're going to be using 150,000 gig per second across the internet. So there's been an absolute exponential increase in data usage over the last 20, 25 years. This has mainly been led by some of the things that David mentioned just, so the move to more hosted technology or technology as a service, infrastructure as a service, things like Office 365, things like hosted telephony. In the consumer world, consumer on-demand services such as Netflix and hosted gaming. So there's been an awful rise in bandwidth demands. However, in addition to this as well, computing speed and servers powers have increased exponentially over that time. But the one thing that hasn't really increased during this period has been the UK broadband speed. So you can see from the graph there, there's been a bit of an increase in 2005, 2006, and a little bit more of an increase in 2015, but it's largely plateaued. So we have all these this increase in demand for bandwidth, but sadly, internet speeds lagging behind that. Reason for that being is that the UK had largely one incumbent supplier controlling internet services for the last 20, 30, 40 years. And that's typically run over copper infrastructure that's in the ground and not fibre infrastructure, which has a limitation on the speeds that it can offer. What that meant is that in 2015, the UK was ranked 35th in the world for our fibre coverage. We sat at 3% fibre coverage across the whole of the UK, in comparison to places like Spain that were pushing 80%, and places like Lithuania and Latvia that were pushing 50, 60%. And the current figure is that we're at 13% full fibre coverage. So we've increased by 10% fibre coverage in the last 5 years alone. And this has largely been driven by the rise of what we call alternative digital network infrastructure providers, of which we are the leading one in the UK. It's not just ourselves that are doing this. There are full fibre providers all over the nation now. There's probably about 20 or 25 independent businesses that have been founded over the last 5, 6, 7 years that have had private investment to come and do full fibre delivery in towns and cities or rural locations around the UK, with each one having their own particular build plan. If you look back to what the nation's infrastructure was like 5 years ago, it was pretty much like this: a rusty bit of plumbing. We had all of this existing copper infrastructure in the ground, hardly any fibre. There's an awful mesh of some of this infrastructure that's in the ground is Victorian age infrastructure now. There's 5,600 telephone exchanges across the UK, which are all drawing an awful lot of power. So the nation's infrastructure, it's fair to say, was absolutely creaking under the demands of what the modern day needs. You know, the UK is 80% service-led economy, with the 5th largest economy in the world, yet we ranked 35th for our fibre coverage. It's an appalling statistic, to be honest. And this is the reason why in the last 12 months, full fibre has started to become part of mainstream news. You know, it was at the forefront of both major political parties' agendas in the last campaign last year. There's been something called a Gigabit voucher scheme available for businesses and consumers, where the government is giving money to both business and residential customers to get full fibre services delivered. Because the UK government absolutely recognise that the thing that's going to drive our economy forward over the next 50 to 100 years is fibre infrastructure and is digital infrastructure. We've been through an industrial revolution and we led the way with that. We as the UK really want to lead the way in what is now the digital revolution, and we're massively in the midst of it. At this point, you might be thinking, but hang on a minute, Paul, you say only 13% of the UK has got fibre, but I've got fibre at home, and I know my neighbour's got fibre, or I've got BT Infinity, which is a fibre service. Sadly, it's not. So I'm just going to talk to you a little bit about the difference between full fibre and what we in the industry call fake fibre. So a lot of what is sold as fibre today to consumer and to business is actually something that's called fibre to the cabinet. What that is, it's a piece of fibre from one of the 5,600 telephone exchanges around the UK. It's a piece of fibre from there to a little green cabinet at street level. You've probably seen them all around. Sometimes they've got a bit of graffiti on them. Sometimes they've got the door busted open on them. The one in my street certainly has all the time. And from that little green cabinet in the street, a piece of copper is taken from there to the customer premise. So it's still delivered on that tired old piece of copper, which could be 40, 50, 60, 70 years old. Going back a slide to what I spoke about with the broadband speed and the slight little kinks that you've seen over the last kind of 10 years, has been largely where the copper infrastructure has just been minimalised, and they've tried to take fibre closer to the customer premise, but still not done that last bit to actually take the fibre all the way to the premise. So in 2011, 2012, when fibre to the cabinet was launched as a service, it was deemed as a fibre service. But sadly, it's not, because it's only half fibre to that green cabinet and still delivered on copper. It's still subjected to issues around weather. So things like rain and storms can affect copper. They call it noise on the line. Things within property can disrupt that service. Whereas fibre is a pure piece of glass, as you can see in the bottom, from an exchange to the customer premise. So it's not reliant on any copper infrastructure and is not subjected to those same issues or intermittent issues such as noise, weather, etc. And it's pretty much limitless in its capability. So the limitations around copper really are that one of the best products available today can only offer about 80 megabits per second download, and that's at the very best. And it can offer about 20 megabits per second upload. Let's just have a look at that in the consumer world. In the consumer world, if you want to run Netflix at home at 4K, you need a consistent 25 megabits per second. So let's just say you've got a family of 4 at home on a fake fibre connection that's got perhaps 60 or 70 meg down at best. You might have a couple watching 4K Netflix. Google's new Stadia platform that they've just launched is an online gaming platform that requires 50 megabits per second to run at a good performance. So if you've got 2 children, family of 4 in a household, trying to run 2 online gaming platforms and 4K Netflix, it's going to be a buffering nightmare. If you take that into the business environment and you've got a 30-user office that are running hosted telephony, that are running Office 365, that are trying to get to all of their infrastructure as a service, that will really creak under FTTC. And the other thing is that you don't get an SLA with any of those kind of services. Copper is just a best endeavours product. And copper, by its very nature, is quite flaky. Whereas fibre, it's glass, it just works as light rather than noise, and the fault rate on it is incredibly low. And speeds start typically from gigabit, so you get 1,000 megabits per second down and potentially up to 1,000 megabits per second up. So it's about 12 to 15 times faster than copper that's available today. So I think it's really useful to kind of give that understanding of the difference between fake fibre and full fibre. And I'd implore you that if you do have a fake fibre service at home that you rally, we have a website that we've launched online, which we'll probably share in the Q&A afterwards, where you can sign a petition and help us rally the government to stop providers using the word fibre when it's actually not a full fibre service. Any questions at this point, Dave? Is there anything in the Q&A at all? No? It might be on mute. Okay.
Nothing at the moment.
Great, thanks. So that's a little bit of a history of what fibre is and what copper infrastructure is, and the state of what the UK was in for the last 5 or so years. So it was into this environment that CityFibre was born. We are just about 8.5 years old as a company, and we started with very much a David v Goliath battle. We absolutely want to change the nation's infrastructure for the better. Our mission statement is that we want to transform the top 100 towns and cities in the UK outside of London, transform their digital infrastructure for the next 100 years to drive both social and economic success in each of those towns and cities. The reason why we don't go into London is because London does already have good fibre coverage. However, a lot of the rest of the UK has been neglected up until the last few years. We started our journey building what we call Gigabit Cities, which is a full fibre city. What that looks like is a bit like this. So what we do when we build a Gigabit City is we go in, and the first thing that we do is we approach the local council and we say, we want to come into your city. We want to transform your digital infrastructure for both your residents and for your businesses. What we'll do, we will give them an idea of the timescales it will take us to do that, to dig up the roads and to lay all of that infrastructure. And then we'll also speak to the council about providing public services for them. So we'll approach the council and say, here's everything that we want to do. We can build a network in your city, which you can use as well for your public services, for your community centres, your libraries, your swimming pools, your council buildings themselves. Allow us to come in and do that work. We'll provide that to you at a cheaper price than an incumbent and give you much faster speeds than what you could have got before. In exchange for that, we'd absolutely love your support to help us do this faster. So what's required for us is to get lots of permits to dig, traffic management, road closures, things like that, which can be awfully obstructive to residents and to businesses alike. So by getting the council on side with that, and if they really have a digital objective at the heart of everything that they're doing, they really understand what it will do for their local economy and the GDP of their city, then great, we can usually come up with an agreement. It's a strategic agreement where we'll go in and do our build. And from there, what we do is we ultimately put our own, what we call a fibre exchange into a city. So I mentioned before, there's 5,600 telephone exchanges around the UK. In some cities alone, there could be 20 telephone exchanges. A great example is Edinburgh. There's 19 telephone exchanges in Edinburgh. It's estimated that if you turn them all off tomorrow, they'd say that it costs £8 million a year in just electricity. So in a world where we're all incredibly conscious of CO2, just 19 telephone exchanges are drawing £8 million worth of electricity. Imagine what that's like across 5,600. So we go in and put our single fibre exchange or dual fibre exchanges into those cities. So we'll typically put 2 in for resilience. What we do is we put that into the middle of the city. We have all of our equipment in that fibre exchange. And essentially, imagine a big spider web coming out of that fibre exchange across the city. So we take all of our ducting from that fibre exchange into chambers in the ground. We then take it from those chambers, we spread it out further to street level, and then we put our own little version of grey cabinets at street level and deliver fibre to each of those premises, or to the front of the premises, so that then when a customer wants to take a service at a residential level, we just have to take it from the end of their drive, or wherever it may be. Now, that means that we can then deliver services to home, we can deliver services to businesses, and we also provide services to the mobile networks as well. So 4 and 5G is heavily reliant on fibre infrastructure. So we provide the fibre into those towers. So where we're different to other fibre providers in the UK is that we build one network for all. So I mentioned at the start that, you know, we're not alone in this battle, or this kind of ongoing journey to make to drive the UK's digital infrastructure. There are others that are doing it, and some that are doing it in a very niche or specific way. There's a great company that I personally think is quite cool and exciting in the Lake District. We're just doing the Lake District. It's called B4RM, and they've got farmers who to kind of all chip in to dig their own land and lay duct infrastructure. They've now connected close to 5,000 premises across the whole of the Lake District, which, if you've been to the Lake District, it's incredibly difficult to navigate in a car, let alone to try and probably dig fibre across it. So where we're different, though, to these other providers that are doing their smaller bits, is we're doing whole cities for all verticals to use, as you can see there. And this is where our partnership is incredibly important with businesses like ACS. So we only work with probably a few dozen businesses across the UK who really champion our products and share that share that view of making the UK's digital infrastructure better. So we'll typically work with someone like ACS, who we work with in Northampton and Milton Keynes, who wants to champion that message alongside us and drive that and deliver better services to businesses and residents in those locations. And we're not just doing this in those 2 cities, we're doing this across 62 towns and cities in the UK today. So I mentioned before that we started our life as a bit of a David v Goliath battle against the incumbent. You know, CityFibre started with just 1 city, and then we built out to a 2nd city, and then we built out to a 3rd city. And it was only about 3 years ago that we started to become more mainstream news. And it was only following a kind of a transformational agreement that we did with Vodafone to deliver services to 1 million homes across the UK that we suddenly became a prominent player in the marketplace, and someone that was seen as an absolute competitor to BT and Virgin. So that was something that we announced in 2017. And then just over a year and a half ago, we were acquired by an infrastructure investment fund backed by Goldman Sachs. And it was a £500 million acquisition. And now we've recently announced that we are investing £4 billion to build full fibre services in 62 towns and cities across the UK to 8 million premises. So by 2025, we will have dug past 8 million premises in the UK. It's a massive feat of engineering. We are currently going through some of the biggest contractor tenders of kind of all time, or of infrastructure, certainly in the last 20 or 30 years in the UK. We typically work with local contractors as well, so we'll always try and everything that we do is all about kind of putting money back into the local economy. So where we can, we'll always work with a local contractor that works in that town or city. And so yeah, that project is now going on from the down Portsmouth, Bournemouth, all along the south coast, all the way up to the Highlands. We're now building. So in probably most of the major cities outside of London and the UK, we're now mobilising to build there. And what that means is currently we can sell services in 28 cities in the UK, which is fantastic. But probably by the end of next year, we'll be pushing close to 50 or 60 cities that we'll be able to sell our services in. So it's because of all these reasons that CityFibre have been deemed as key workers and critical workers by the UK government. So clearly there's probably never a more important time than at the moment to be talking about full fibre infrastructure. So, you know, as I said before, 80% service-based economy. I'm working from home today, as you can see here. Probably everyone that's on this call is likely to be working from home today. So it's incredibly important that full fibre is built as quick as possible in the UK to both homes and businesses, because without it, it's going to we are going to find that those services that we use start to creep with our demand for them. So we've been still delivering services over the last 2 months during the COVID-19 lockdown period. We still continue to deliver services today, and we've actually got the backing of the government to continue doing it and to accelerate what we're doing. We were very active and involved with the government in the early stages of the Gigabit voucher scheme that I referred to before, which was a £67 million pot allocated to businesses to tap into to take full fibre services. Sadly, it's just ended and dried up. However, we are lobbying the government to try and do something similar, because, to be frank, the government's original objective was to cover the whole of the UK with full fibre by 2033. Now, one of them made a very bold claim during the election process that we could do it by 2025. We're investing £4 billion into this, and it's estimated it'll cost about 20 billion to 25 billion to roll out full fibre across the whole of the UK. But even with what we're putting into it and what all of the other full fibre providers are putting into it, it's going to be really tough to get there by 2025. The only way that we can do it is if the government continue to help back some of that and offer funding available to kind of business and consumer to tap into. So we're hopeful that, you know, over the coming months, the government will come out with more schemes similar to that previous voucher scheme. And it's probably just it's worth noting that, you know, at the moment, I actually had it pop up at the start of this, which worried me a little bit, saying that I had poor network quality and I should look at turning my camera off, because I'm actually on a fake fibre service at home myself, because that's all that I can get at my property here. I'd love CityFibre to be delivering to Telford in Shropshire, where I am. Sadly, we're 91st on the list of 100, so it's probably going to be a while away yet. But I just wanted to kind of highlight an interesting story that you may have seen on the news in the last few weeks during the kind of COVID-19 pandemic. So it was actually about Gary Anderson, who's a professional darts champion. And the PDC had decided that they were going to continue the darts championship as an online tournament where the darts players could play from home as long as they set up the camera in the right position, set up their darts board, and then they could try to stream it as a live service, as a live game. However, Gary couldn't get involved in it because of the location where he lives. He could only get about 4.5 meg to 5 meg. So he actually posted on Twitter saying, I'm disqualified from the tournament. I can no longer take part in it. He'd actually won the championship only a few years prior to that, but he had to come out of the tournament because the infrastructure that he had to his premises was not sufficient to deal with the live streaming that was required of him. And so I think it just, at the moment, this pandemic has just highlighted again the massive need to accelerate this infrastructure. We've come a long way in the last 5 years. We've gone from 3% of the UK being covered to 13% of the UK being covered. But we're in the really exciting period now. As I said before, it's at the forefront of everyone's minds. It's at the forefront of what we're doing in our working lives and our home lives. And it's a really, really exciting period for the UK's infrastructure and the UK economy. I personally am very passionate about this stuff, and I just can't wait to see what the next 5 years looks like. Will we be at 50%, 60%? It's just such an exciting journey and so good to be part of. I'm going to hand over to my colleague James now, who's going to talk a little bit about what we're doing in Northampton and what this is going to be worth to Northampton. And then hopefully there might be some questions at the end in the Q&A. Thank you very much for that. Thanks for listening. I've been Paul. Over to James. If you're there. Are you there, James? Is he on mute?
Unmute myself first, shouldn't I? I do that every single call I think I'm on Teams. So as Paul said, I'm the city manager for Northampton, which means I'm basically looking after our fibre to the home build. As Paul said, actually, Northampton was one of the first towns and cities in the UK that CityFibre announced. We were 12th on the list. give you a little bit of background information, the latest data, hot off the press, even newer than Paul's, the UK is now at 13.9% full fibre coverage, and that's grown a lot in the last year. Northamptonshire, by and large, doesn't quite perform as well as the UK average. It's down at 11.9, and then in Northampton, we do a lot worse. We're at 4%. The graphs you can sort of see around that are kind of year-on-year performance. So you can see, building on what Paul was sort of saying, that this move to full fibre is about one of the sole policy agreements and policy drivers that the government and all the major political parties are agreeing on, with Boris, as we say, sort of wanting to accelerate the 2033 full fibre commitments. In Northamptonshire, the council, Paul said we work very closely with them. They have a target to get up to 40% full fibre by 2023, so they've still got a fair way to go. And I'm pleased to say, actually, in Northamptonshire, we are one of the main drivers of what's pushing forward this growth in gigabit connectivity, particularly in Northampton. And we're doing that through our £40 million investment in a brand new fibre infrastructure that'll be connecting every or nearly every premise in Northampton. So if I can have the next slide, please, Paul. So this wonderful map is showing you our city build. It's basically all of the urban area of Northampton. So we do include Grange Park and parts of Malton. As Paul said, we've actually been in Northampton now since 2016. We've got a 45-kilometre sort of fibre network serving many of the main business parks in Northampton and going through the town centre. Our investment, Paul talked a lot about us digging and connecting new premises. In Northampton, we're actually trialling some new deployment technologies. We're calling it the hybrid model, and this hybrid model is basically you will still see us digging in streets and laying a brand new infrastructure, but what we'll also do, because we're a code powers organisation, Ofcom regulate us and give us these powers, we're actually able to use existing BT Openreach network, whether that's ducts in the ground or poles in streets. So we're actually able to use a lot of that existing infrastructure where possible and put our fibre over that network. So in effect, massively minimising the disruption to residents and businesses in areas. In some facts, we've deployed to areas, and the challenge that we've got is actually making sure folk are aware that they are now able to access this brand new fibre network, because we really have reduced the amount of digging in areas. All that being said, we have now built 50 kilometres of new fibre in Northampton since our start in September 2019. So we're making excellent progress. The two areas, the maps you can see is Paul mentioned fibre exchange areas. Well, these fibre exchange areas in Northampton, because we're covering about 85,000 premises, we need two of them. So we've got one in Brackmills, and we're also very close to going live with the second FEX area covering the north of Northampton. And in effect, this build, this programme that we're looking for on this will be around the back end of 2022, early 2023, for us to complete all of the works in Northampton. So if I could have the next slide, please, Paul. What does that mean? So, this is undoubtedly, as Paul said, it's it is the largest currently construction project in Northampton. We are investing £40 million direct, but what does this actually mean for the economy and for businesses in Northampton? Well, this slide brings out some independent research which we commissioned, showing some of the potential impacts. So directly, we're talking about supply chain. We use local firms. One of the companies that builds a lot of our equipment is based in Northampton. A lot of the evidence that we're seeing around full fibre is that it has at the very least, and we've taken some quite conservative estimates on this. There's a figure out there that it's around a value between 2 and 10% on property values, either positive or negative in terms of if you've got good broadband or not. We've chosen one right at the bottom level, so that's just that 78 million increase in household wealth in terms of improving the value of your house is based on a 3% increase. We're talking here about sort of providing, unrivaled speeds, more data, lower costs, better value for money. So when you put that across the networks, it's going to drive innovation in businesses, opening up new markets, new systems, new products that can be run via online services. We're seeing new startups. The literature around this is absolutely clear that whether you're looking to attract new businesses to a town or a city, whether you're looking to support startups, whether you're working around education or e-learning, the metrics are all very, very positive around what this economic benefit can be for Northampton. And then we also talk around the fact that we're also working around sort of, Paul mentioned the wider Industrial Revolution 4.0, we're talking about Internet of Things type enablement. And while in some cases a lot of these devices don't take up a huge amount of data in isolation, the growth in the number of connected smart devices or sort of, street works, smart traffic light, air quality sensors, thousands and thousands, hundreds of thousands, millions of small interconnected dependent sensors are going to have a significant bandwidth in total, even though individually they're very small. And then, as Paul also said, that you won't have a 5G town and city without having a sort of full fibre connection to this. The existing copper bandwidth just won't provide that sort of broad speed or connectivity we're talking about. So when we've looked in total, adding all these benefits up for purely the Northampton economy that we showed in the area, we're talking about this independent research we did worked it out at about 440 million over the next 15 years. So a significant economic boost to Northampton. And obviously, as Paul said, we're going to be rolling this out across 60 plus towns and cities across the UK. So moving on, Paul. One of the key things that we are very mindful of is around two elements. One, this is a big construction project, even though we talked around the fact that our new technologies and techniques are going to minimise disruption. We do a lot of engagement with the communities. So we're in with parish councils, we spend an awful amount of time with the council and the highways departments. We do a lot of information. We were doing letter door knocking. We're now doing letter dropping around, what are the benefits that this full fibre network can bring. What are we going to be doing around work in your street? So we're doing this kind of dual information around us, providing information around what we're doing in a town and a city and getting that broader awareness of full fibre connectivity up. But we're also very mindful about making sure that we've got only one chance to bring residents and businesses along with us and make sure that they're aware that the investment and the disruption that we're causing in an area is going to be very much worth it in the longer time. And then, as Paul said, very much recently looking at the kind of COVID-19 responses. We are all key workers, or our teams out are key workers. We've put additional methods in around social distancing and various signage and PPE in place for our workers, very much recognising the concerns of residents as well about, we are still building in their areas. So again, Paul, thank you. So where are we up to in Northampton at the minute then? So as I said, first homes went live in April the 1st. We have now covered about 3,100 premises in Northampton. We have got some of the highest level take up from our commercial partners, and I'll talk about that in a moment. But we've also been doing a huge amount of work in the community to try and promote the CityFibre project and the full fibre message more widely. So won't talk them through, but if you're in Northampton, you will probably have seen the Gigabit, as we lovingly call it, outside the Guild Hall there. We've sponsored and undertaken some careers in digitals videos with the county council that has now gone out to all their schools, where we've got a colleague, Hannah, who's our fibre manager, and Lee, who is a planner. So really kind of demonstrating the range of careers in digital and even building these networks. We took over a couple of classes in some of the local schools' IT courses, where we took them out and showed them how we build a network. lots of support from the members of Parliament for the town. We did a high-profile launch and got government along to kind of show the commitment that we were doing to Northampton. So a lot of positive news actually for Northampton and Northamptonshire about what this investment is going to bring, and that hasn't historically been the case for Northampton. And we're very, very pleased to be able to push the fact that Northampton will be one of the best connected places in the country when we've worked around installing our fibre and our business networks. So Paul, if you want to move on. And where are we going next? As I said, we're making great progress on what we're doing already. I know David and others are keen for us to expand our CityFibre to include more homes. So you're not on fibre to the cabinet. We absolutely are doing that. We are looking at how we extend the boundary. We're also looking at how we can start modelling out places like Kettering, Corby and Wellingborough to move to those. But we've talked through the scale of some of the investments we're putting on here, and it is a competitive decision. We have got towns and cities now up and down the country engaging with us to see if we can bring this game-changing technology to their areas. So you have advocates locally. We really are pushing for this. We're making great progress in bringing forward the north parts of Northampton as we move forward, and then we're very much starting to work around, okay, what do we do around new housing builds? We're working with some developers, some we're not as engaged with, so we're very mindful that we don't create pockets of Northampton or any towns and cities where you won't be able to connect to this game-changing infrastructure. So we're doing a lot around that, making sure that we're connecting as many premises as we can. And also then really starting to work with the likes of ACS and the councils and some of the other great technology businesses in and around the county around actually how do we drive the benefits of this new network that's in the ground. A lot of what we're doing is actually starting to promote and see the innovation and drive that's coming through businesses in utilising this new technology. So there's a terrific amount of work going on in that area as well. So I think next one, and that's probably about me, Paul. Just to reiterate, and this is going over the benefits of fibre again. So CityFibre, we are unique in that we look to build entire towns and cities. We're not looking to just do the business park, just do the social housing, or just do the residential. And we build to all elements, all verticals in the market. The network that we're building is future-proof. We're bang on line with policy. We've got a long way to go to catch up internationally, and it's a recognised issue that we need to do. And if we want all the benefits about home working, telemedicine, you've seen a lot of GPs recently starting to adopt our networks so that they can actually do a lot of the home teleconferences as well. I'm not even going to start to talk too much about flexible home working. I think recent events and the COVID-19 pandemic have just shown how critical this has been in not only keeping the economy going, but how critical it will be in us driving the sort of recovery from the economy as we move forward. And then ultimately, this is going to become a prerequisite. It's not going to be a nice to have. Full fibre broadband is going to be a key factor in the success of towns and cities and how they move forward and deliver their economic development and ambitions moving forward. You just think of the speed changes and what we were used to 5 years ago and where it's going, and a full fibre technology is the only way we will achieve that. So next one, Paul. That says it all.
Right, well, thanks, James. Very informative. If there's any questions, please raise them in the Q&A. We seem to have covered everything because we don't have any questions at the moment. But if you do have any, please add them and we'll answer them offline. And a recording of this will be available on our webinars page. But thanks again, guys, and we'll see you soon.
Yeah, thanks everyone for joining. Take care. Cheers.
Thanks all.
Have a good day. Bye-bye.
Bye.